Hey, hi everyone. Thank y'all for joining us for our Beef Brunch news update for Tuesday, July 26th. I'm sorry you don't get to see our shining faces today. Lee and I are at the Hill Farm and we have essentially no Wi-Fi, so hopefully you're going to be able to hear us and everything's going to work out today. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Vince to let him do our update for Central and South Louisiana.
Well, thank you for having me, Dr. Edwards. And it's here we are, the dog days of summer, no question. Um, Here, in Central Louisiana, even further south, we're still um, not getting the rainfall we need. If you haven't secured your hay needs for the winter feeding period, you may be challenged at this stage of the game because there's not an excessive amount of hay being made. I was on the road yesterday with a client looking at some potential herd bulls in Texas and saw lots of trucks of hay loaded with hay going that way. So there, and even some of the producers in our area are talking about sending hay that way. So it's even going to be short, and what's not spoken for is going to be sold. So it's going to be in a producer's best interest to go ahead and secure whatever. It's not. There's no waiting game anymore. It's time to do it. Talking to ryegrass, some of the local seed distributors, ag seed and chemical distributors. Um, there's no real big concerns on ryegrass. They say they're going to have ryegrass seed this year. There's no real clear answer on price. They say it's going to be about the same as it was last year, which was in the upper 30s as far as per 50-pound bag. Uh, it didn't, and it doesn't sound like there's going to be any shortage of varieties, but that's yet to be seen. It's time to go ahead and book that seed and speak for that as well. With the high cost of doing business with fertilizer, seed, fuel, if there's any kind of culling that needs to be done through the herd, it's might be a good time to do it. Um, just to kind of cut down on some of that winter feeding cost. Maybe a good option to keep heifers at this stage of the game with the cycle at the point it's at. That there's still, numbers are high and what heifers are being processed or being killed and sent to processing. So it's maybe time to keep some heifers and get rid of some cows that are marginal and got some age and maybe low on production or getting low on production. Um, Flies, horn fly issues are still being a problem. It's hot and dry, and we typically see those populations on the increase and pretty prevalent during in hot, dry conditions. Being at the peak of the summer months and high temperatures, cows are very agitated with them at this stage of the game, trying to stay cool. So take those measures with topical treatments, back rubs, IGR type minerals in the mineral feeders, whatever works best for you. It's in your best interest to keep those fly populations in check. Um, Everything's pretty mundane as far as you're hearing of some folks are still working cattle, putting fly tags, to try to manage that fly population. Some late season deworming is July. Some of the local veterinarians recommend doing some midsummer deworming, and some of that's going on in the early morning hours, late in the evening. We getting to the mid 90s most days with humidity. It's we're reaching heat index in the triple digits. So um, take precaution. Herd bulls are generally off cow herds right now. Keep an eye on those guys. That's an important part of your calf crop moving forward. Um, Bulls hadn't gotten any cheaper, so take good care of those guys moving forward. Good luck with the rest of the hay season and in ryegrass and whatever winter plantings that you're intending on doing because it's time to start making those decisions. We're knocking on August 1st, and usually by mid-September, some of those plantings are taking place. So we're roughly 6 weeks away from that taking place, and it's hard to believe that heard on one of the radio stations we're 4 months away from Christmas. So take that with a grain of salt, but the year is passing by, and hopefully things look better moving forward. Calf market still looks good, and I'm sure Ashley may cover some of those marketing adventures right now, but the board is trading very well right now. So moving forward, be yet to be seen with the spring run when the spring run calves hit the barns and marketing locations this fall, how that price is going to react. So with that being said, stay cool and keep your cattle cool and make sure that water troughs are checked on if not daily, every other day, to make sure there's a good water source. That's about all I have, Ashley.
All right, thank you, sir. Lee, you can go ahead and do our Northwest update, please, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Glad to be with y'all today. Hot as a word up here, fellas. It's hot and mostly dry. I say mostly dry because the entire area is in a drought, but there have been some small pockets of places that got much needed rain. On the eastern side of the northwest region in Lincoln Parish Way, there's some producers over there that saw a little over an inch of rain a few days ago. Talked to a guy out of southern Bienville Parish that picked up a little over 2 inches of rain just from a random cell on a pop-up thunderstorm, and that rain was greatly appreciated. Some of the worst pockets of drought in our part of the world are on the southwest side of the region, down DeSoto Parish Way, Sabine Parish Way. Terrible down that way. Pasture conditions just abhorrent. And they did pick up some much needed rainfall. But when you're in weather like what we're in right now, whenever you're talking about high 90s every day, if not 100s, it takes sustained rainfall and moderation of temperatures to make a substantial difference as far as the soil moisture, and of course that translates over into grass growth. And something Vince brought up back a couple of news updates ago, you know, we kind of crossed the threshold on these daylight hours, and we're coming into a time where these daylight hours are waning, so to speak. So we're losing a little bit of growing time too. But we're hoping for some more moisture. We've got some pretty decent rain chances in the future for this weekend. Hopefully, we can realize that. Pasture conditions, as I said, across the region are so-so at best, all the way to horrible. Some hay is being fed. I've talked to several producers that are feeding hay on some pastures that are a little bit heavier stock than what they might like them to be, or weaning some calves. Of course, you're going to feed some hay during those times. So it's really challenging to feed that hay this time of the year. Very little cow penning going on in our corner of the world, except what just absolutely has to be done. We shipped a load of steers this morning here from the Hill Farm, folks here at the Hill Farm, along with Ashley and myself, and we started at 6:30 this morning and finished up about 9, and it was just getting to be touch too hot when we finished up. So anything that's happening has got to happen early in the morning. You can't pen large sets of cattle if it takes a long time to get them through, because I wrote down on my little note sheet here, water and shade. Vince already touched on that, and y'all are probably tired of hearing us talk about that this summer. It is so crucial and important that you've got all that figured out. Quality water sources that are where the cattle are at. You know, I was talking to a fellow the other day. His shade source, which is little copse of trees, was a pretty good ways away from his water trough. And you get up into the 100-degree weather, and those cattle aren't really wanting to leave that shade to get to that water. So kind of have to think about some of those things when we get to weather such as this. And shade is just so important. Just wanted to make a brief note, kind of be on the guard. I've talked to one person and that had a confirmed case of anaplasmosis, and another that is suspected anaplas. Be ready, folks. Vince stated we're moving more into this late summer kind of time frame, and we know that anaplasmosis rears its ugly head starting kind of late in the summer into fall for sure, and some early winter. So be on guard with that. Visit with your vet. Those preventative measures need to be taken. Try to mitigate that damage if you know you have a herd that is a carrier on anaplas. prices are looking pretty good. We're in pretty good shape for the shape we're in, I guess, so to speak. Seeing fairly large runs of cattle. One thing Vince stated that's going to be interesting to see how the market responds to the fall run whenever these spring-born calves are being weaned and sold. You know, you could actually make the argument that we're in the fall run right now, and maybe that we have been for a couple of weeks now, maybe going back as early as the 4th of July. Seeing a lot of light cattle hitting the market. Folks are just grazed out on some pastures that are dry, and they're having to make some hard decisions on that. Market seems to be strengthening. We seem to be on an uptick on our market. It's going to be interesting to see if we can sustain, if these prices can be sustained whenever these numbers really start hitting. Want to echo again what Vince said, and not trying to copycat him, but I want to reinforce what he said. I know that a lot of people that listen to this report bale their own hay and whatnot, but I'm sure there's some that listen to us that buy their hay, what they need for the winter. I have talked to so many people that sell hay, and they say the same thing. They're having to call their customers, some of them long-time customers that, you know, buy 200, 300, 400, 500 rolls a year, and they're having to tell them, you know, I can do 100 rolls, or I got 200, but you're not going to get your full order for this year. It bears repeating and just reinforcing that if you don't have that hay on your place yet, or, you know, if you talk to a good hay producer and they promised you 200 rolls or what, you better verify with them. Make sure they're on track to get that if you don't have the hay on your place already. I've had several calls from folks that are looking for hay, wanting to know which direction to go. I don't have an answer for that. I talk to folks all across the country, and I know they're dry mostly in South Arkansas to Middle Arkansas. They have picked up a little bit of rainfall that we haven't. Of course, you hear what Vince has to say about the drought conditions down his way. Texas is a no-go for sure. They're drier than we are, so that just kind of leaves east as a direction to head, possibly to get some hay supplies in. And that leaves me my final thing, Ashley. I'm going to wrap up with this, and that's hard decisions, and I've got that underlined. There are a lot of hard decisions being made right now. There's so many factors that come into play whenever you're trying to decide the future of your herd and management styles. You know, we talk on these things quite often about weaning and backgrounding calves, and maybe even retaining ownership, planting some ryegrass or some winter annuals, some kind of forage that you can graze those calves and get them to a higher marketing weight. So there's so many factors that come into play right now, feed costs, hay supply, that you make some hard decisions, folks. And while the killing cow market has dropped off a little bit, it's not as low as we've seen it in the last 2 or 3 years, that's for sure. And it's not as low as what it probably should be with the number of cows that are hitting the market. So as we've stated many times, we've been talking about this for almost a year now. If you've got these unproductive members of your herd, these cows that will pop open every other year, or that just wean a little doggy type calf, you know, if you can't squeeze any more than 300 or 400 pounds out of the weaning weight on these cattle, you need to be sending them. You need to be thinking long term as far as, well, would I be better off selling these unproductive cows, and knowing that we're in an uptick, as Vince stated, on this cattle market. Maybe I need to keep some heifers, try to plant some ryegrass, and try to maintain herd numbers going that route. A lot of hard decisions being made, and these feed costs and other input costs and shortages of hay are just making it difficult. Whenever you're right there on the precipice of having enough hay, and then you think about having to wean a pretty large set of calves early and keeping them, you got to play that into your hay calculations, knowing that you're going to be feeding hay earlier on your cow herd than what you normally would. So I just said a lot, and I summed up a lot of pretty heavy-duty decision-making considerations in just a short amount of time. I want to stress, and we do this quite regularly, that we're here for you. If we can help you in your decision-making, if we can kind of walk through some of this stuff and run some numbers, we'll be more than glad to, any of us, and including Jason. We can definitely go through some of these things and with you and help you in this decision-making process. All right, Ashley, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to move over into our markets, and I have to thank Jason for putting this together. Even though he's out on leave, he still put all this together, which is good for y'all, because when I try to do this, it doesn't come out nearly as well. So for the markets ending the week of July 22nd, the July 2022 cattle on feed report was released that Friday. Cattle and calves on feed for the slaughter market in the United States for feedlots with a capacity of 1,000 head or more totaled 11.3 million on July 1st of 2022. The inventory was slightly high or slightly above July 1 of 21. Inventory included 6.9 million steers and steer calves, down 1% from the previous year. Heifers and heifer calves accounted for 4.45 million head, which is up 3% from the previous year. Placements in feedlots during June totaled 1.63 million head, 2% below 2021. The July 2022 cattle inventory was also released Friday. With no surprise, the July 1 cattle inventory was down 2%. All cattle and calves in the United States on July 1 totaled 98.8 million head, which is 2% below the 101 million head on July 1 of 2021. This past week's slaughter at 665,000 head was 10,000 over the prior year. Cow slaughter numbers declined for the first time in many weeks. Retailers continue purchasing for midsummer needs, and the cutout continues to surprise by posting gains. Choice box beef closed the week at $269.71, which is up $1.44, with a choice select spread of $27.37, up $1.12 from the previous week, and $14.38 higher than the 5-year average for the same week. As reported, the National Weekly Direct Slaughter Cattle Negotiated Purchases report on a confirmed 69,032 head. For the week in the Texas Panhandle, live purchases traded steady to $1 lower at $136. For the week in Kansas, live purchases traded $1 lower, also at $136. For the week in Nebraska, week live purchases traded $1 to $1.50 lower, from $139 to $143.50. In the Western Corn Belt for the week, live purchases traded steady, $2.50 lower, from $141 to $145. Live cattle futures market settlements in the front months ended the week with August up $1.65 at $137.37. October up $2.02 at $143, and December was up $1.85 at $148.17. He also has a note in here that live cattle futures ended the week $2 to $3 higher when compared to the week open. 5 to 6 weight steers, mediums and large ones and twos, sold between $167 and $179, which is generally $1 lower when compared to the previous week. 7 to 8 weight feeder steers, mediums and large ones and twos, sold between $146 and $158, which was steady to $4 higher when compared to the previous week. Futures market settlements in the front months ended the week with August trading up $3.27 at $181.55. September up $3.17 at $184.47, and October up $2.77 at $187. Feeder cattle futures ended the week mostly higher, mostly $3 higher, when compared to the week open. Lean cull cows, so those with the body condition score of about 4, thin conditioned ended the week down 8 cents at 62. Boning utilities, so body condition scores of 5 to 6, those in moderate condition ended the week down 8 cents at 68. And breakers, which are your high condition body condition scores of about 7, ended the week down 9 cents at 70 cents. And then moving into our feedstuffs, soybean meal was down $34.50 at $481.50. Soybean hulls were steady at $155. Rice bran was steady at 190. Cottonseed meal was steady at 365. Whole cottonseed was down $5 at 430. Corn gluten feed meal, that's the 60%, was steady at 755. DDGs down $6.25 at 256.25. And then our corn was down 24 cents at $6.11 a bushel. So thank you again, Jason, for getting those markets together for us. Just a couple of things to close out for us today. So I want to say thank you to everybody that joined us last Friday, whether it was virtually or in person, for our beef marketing workshop. We had a pretty good turnout for that. Very grateful for our producers that came and spoke on the producer panel, and also all of our speakers that came in and joined us there. Our July webinar that I did a couple weeks ago, which was on commercial heifer selection and development, is going to be posted online either today or tomorrow, depending on how the Wi-Fi turns out here. Our next webinar is going to be on Tuesday, August 9th at 10:30 a.m. So we'll have Dr. Ryan Walker come, and he's going to be discussing the relationship between cow size and profitability. All of that information is going to be on our Beef Brunch website, which is lsuagcenter.com/beefbrunch. And then we've said this before, but want to keep reminding y'all that our Master Cattleman class for the West Feliciana area is still open. Those classes are going to run September 1st through November 3rd. Registration is going to close August 15th, and it's limited to 25 seats. Your contact for that is Dr. Donna Gentry, and I do have all that information in the video and podcast descriptions. So with that, as Lee said, I think maybe Vince too, we're going to keep our fingers crossed and pray for some rain this weekend. It's definitely much needed. And as Lee also said, reach out to us at any point if you have any questions or anything that we can help you with. And with that, we will be back with y'all in a couple of weeks.